Okay, so now we're to Brian Cole the second out of Mississippi State here. Obviously teammates with Cameron Dancer, who Minnesota also took in the third round. Comes in at 6'2", 213, 31 and 3/8 inch arms, 10-inch hands, and a 4.52 40. So his coverage spacing, it's not very much experience at the SEC level of working in space, predominantly working into those shallow spaces as a slot defender and kind of jam up those route releases. He does lack that hip mobility and lateral quickness just to buzz around and jump routes when targets work through his zones and work away from his landmark. His acceleration, it's a pretty fair amount of pop when he's kind of driving into the play, most notable in those shallow zones against smoke or bubble throws, or even when he's designated at a blister. So could be looking at a potential big nickel here. His long speed certainly passes the test, but application when he's tasked with just getting off the tracks and moving in mirror is much more limited. It's not really there. His tackling, he has an impressive power through his frame as a finisher. If he is unimpeded to the target, he'll kind of build momentum and deliver some jarring hits. Mirror skills are hindered by that tightness that I mentioned before, just in the hips, and at times comes in a little too flat on his angles into the play and will kind of work himself behind the action just by himself. So he'll kind of put himself behind the 8 ball and out of the play just by virtue of, taking the wrong pursuit angle. I think his coverage skills in zone, it's a developmental player at best. He can work those shallow zones, but unless he kind of gets a tip ball or a receiver runs right into him practically, he's not going to make a lot of plays, and his anticipation is underwhelming. He's too reactive to plays, putting himself, once again, kind of a little late to the party, right? Everything's a little slow. The ball production is not really there. He is a former receiver, so you'd actually assume the ball tracking skills and hands are good for a defender, but we don't get a lot of reps of him attacking the ball in the air, and I would not feel comfortable just saying, oh no, he can cover deep portions of the field and asking him to be that last line of defense. Not really something I'd be comfortable with. Doesn't mean he can't do it, just means we haven't seen it yet. And he is tough. He is a tough kid, and he kind of beats the hell out of receivers who set up at the point and try to block on the outside or just run those quick passes into the flat. He has an imposing hit power to him. Sorry. Good effort, and then his long arms at his disposal to press and collapse blocks on the edge. Would be more comfortable working him on the second level in the box with more development in that area. His hip mobility, it's pretty restricted for the most part, and it hinders him in a number of ways. His transitions they're very rigid. Hips and pads are kind of high on his pedal, and he looks like he's struggling a little bit when he's trying to get to the depth and kind of take away intermediate targets. He has not really illustrated a lot of lean through the attacks to crash into gaps or to react to ball carrier, like when they're cuttings and things like that. When it comes to just his feet and things of that nature, it's pretty static on the base. Doesn't really show too much of a comfort level when reaching with his feet out from underneath his frame. Doesn't really turn with a lot of suddenness, and you'd like to see him flatten kind of in the box a little bit more, a little sharper angles to allow him to close space quickly and contest more potential finishes. His man coverage skills I thought were a little better. He had some effective reps working into the slot to blow up releases, but he's probably best moving forward drawing tight ends to kind of compensate for some of the own limitations in mobility, quickness, and range. But you kind of have to walk that fine line in his usage, protecting him from isolation reps versus those better athletes. When it comes to his versatility, I think right now he's exclusively a box safety, although there is reason that he can become an effective coverage player on kick teams if he can kind of get through those special teams tests, if you will. And the chances of sticking on to the roster they increase a lot versus just a defender role with so much development needed. And if I had to guess, this is kind of a practice squad candidate unless he can stick out on special teams. So for his sake, he better hope there is the training camp and the preseason, because otherwise I think this is a practice squad player that may have some upside, and he does have some athleticism given being a former receiver, and he hasn't played defense very long. I think it's only like a year or two he has. So you could look at, well, there's potential upside here. Maybe you want to keep him around, see what comes of it, things like that. But I don't know how long you really want to invest in this project. But yeah, I would like to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Liking, subscribing, super helpful. And until next time, I bid y'all adieu.